There were 3 empty wine glasses on the desk. One was still wet at the rim. The back of her dress was zipped only halfway, and she didn't seem to notice. From where I stood, just outside the open conference room door, I could see her reflection in the glass panel. She was laughing at something. A strange kind of laugh. Not the one I heard when she used to call me from the grocery store, asking if we needed almond milk. This was different. Breathier. Too familiar. He was standing behind her. Way too close. One hand on the table beside her. The other one in his pocket, like he wasn't even trying to hide the fact that he belonged there. No one noticed me yet. Not her. Not him. Not the others across the room, too drunk to connect dots. I had no plan. I just stood there, clutching a foil-wrapped box I was told to bring up as part of the surprise. Landon had shoved it into my hands in the elevator lobby and whispered, "Wait outside the big room. We'll cue you." They never cued me. The room was already filled with clinking glasses and backpats and some guy with a saxophone who clearly thought this was the Grammys. But I never heard a thing except her voice. Her voice, when she said, "You're bad," and swatted him lightly on the arm. He smirked. She leaned in. He didn't move. Neither did I. This wasn't a surprise anymore. This was a reveal. And I wasn't the audience. I was the punchline. Someone knocked over a plastic tray behind me, snapping a few people's heads toward the door. Someone else said, "Hey, is that?" She turned and froze. Her eyes locked on mine like she'd just been caught shoplifting a diamond. And for a second, I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. The man beside her didn't look surprised. Just annoyed. He straightened his collar and took a step back. Not because he was guilty, but because he didn't want me near her. I didn't move. I just looked at her. Past her, really. At the woman I no longer recognized. A dozen cameras were recording. Some live streamed to coworkers in other cities. She tried to say something. I couldn't hear it. I placed the foil-wrapped box on the nearest table. Someone clapped, then stopped halfway through when they realized no one else was clapping. I backed out of the room, bumping into a server carrying shrimp skewers. He apologized. I apologized harder. That's what I do. When the elevator doors finally closed, I saw her one last time through the shrinking crack, still frozen, hand covering her mouth, like she was watching a train wreck she had no idea she started. I went back to the parking garage. I sat in the car. I opened the box. It wasn't for her. It was a framed plaque. Employee of the Quarter, Kelsey Monroe. Right below that was a printed quote. "Excellence starts with integrity." I laughed. A sharp, ugly kind of laugh. Then I started shaking. And then I realized something worse than the betrayal. Everyone else in that room already knew. The longer I sat in that parking garage, the more I started to notice things I hadn't before. Not just in the rearview mirror. In my memory. Patterns. Gaps. Little absences that had quietly stacked up until they became a wall between us. And I built half of it myself without even realizing it. It started with silence. The harmless kind. The "I'm just tired" kind. Then came the late meetings, the locked screens, the charged whispers behind closed doors. Her phone started living face down. She smiled less at home, laughed more at work. And I said nothing. Because I didn't want to come off as needy, or jealous, or small, even when I felt all three. After leaving the office party disaster, I didn't go home. I didn't call anyone. I drove around aimlessly until the city lights gave way to empty roads. I ended up in front of a 24-hour diner we used to visit after movie nights. The waitress there still had braces, but her hair had turned gray. She poured me coffee without asking. "You look like you need it," she said softly, not even waiting for a response. I just nodded and stared at the bubbling swirl of cream as it settled into the black. I felt like that cup, stirred up, overheated, sweetened on the outside, bitter underneath. I stayed there for 3 hours. She didn't text me once, not even to ask where I was. The next morning, I went back to the apartment. I half expected to find her gone, or maybe waiting for me with an apology and some dramatic excuse. But the living room was untouched. The couch pillows still fluffed, the throw blanket still folded like a magazine ad. It felt like a showroom, not a home. She was asleep. At least, she pretended to be. I stood in the doorway for a while, watching her breathe, wondering how many lies had been whispered into that same pillow. Her back was turned, arms tucked under her body like a child hiding a broken toy. For a second, God help me, I thought about crawling in next to her and pretending none of it happened. But then I saw it. A blue gift bag under the dresser. The tissue paper was crumpled like it had been hurriedly stuffed in. Inside was a cologne box, still sealed, a brand I didn't wear. There was also a card. It read, "For Carson, congratulations on the campaign win. You earned more than applause. K." I stood there holding that bag, my heart slamming like fists against my ribs. She stirred, rolled over. Her eyes met mine. She saw the bag. She saw my face. And still, she said nothing. Not, "I can explain." Not, "It's not what you think." She just sat up and quietly pulled the covers over her lap, as if we were strangers forced to share a room at a broken-down motel. After a moment, she spoke. "You shouldn't have come to the party." I blinked. "That's what you want to say right now?" Her gaze dropped to the bag in my hand. "You were never supposed to see it like that." "Like what?" I asked. "Like this? Like my wife slipping into someone else's orbit while I stood in the doorway holding a box like a pet waiting to be fed." She flinched at that. "Good. I was tired of being the only one bleeding." She sighed and ran a hand through her hair. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way." "Which part?" I asked. "The affair? The party? Or the part where everyone else already knew, and I was the one idiot who showed up believing I was the surprise?" Silence. I dropped the bag on the floor. "I think I'll go stay with my brother for a bit," I muttered. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just lay back down. I waited. Still, nothing. I left. But what happened next, that's what I wasn't ready for. Because stepping away from the apartment didn't just give me space, it opened a door I didn't know existed. And behind that door was a version of my marriage I hadn't been allowed to see. And once I opened it, I realized. She wasn't the only one keeping secrets. I didn't go to my brother's place. I don't even know why I said it. Maybe it sounded like a cleaner exit then. I'm driving to nowhere with a pit in my stomach and a toothbrush in my glove box. But my brother, Zach, was the last person I wanted to see. He had a good marriage. One of those annoyingly stable, wholesome, composting, candle-burning marriages that made mine look like a rusted-out pickup held together with duct tape and guilt. So instead, I booked a cheap motel off I-17. The kind with buzzing lights and a TV remote that didn't match the television. There was a faded painting above the bed of a lake that didn't exist, and the air smelled like bleach pretending to be citrus. But at least it was silent. That first night, I didn't sleep. I scrolled through old texts with Kelsey. Just to punish myself, I guess. Reading all the messages where she called me, Ev, said she missed me at work, sent selfies from hotel lobbies and airport lounges and team dinners. I'd never thought twice about any of them before. But now, every single one was a crime scene photo. All clues. All lies. There was one text that stuck out. 3 months ago, she messaged. Flight got moved again. So annoyed. Carson's crashing too. Ugh. Exhausted. At the time, I'd sent back. Hang in there. I'll leave dinner in the fridge for when you get home. I'd even added a heart emoji. God. The next morning, I woke up to a pounding headache and an overwhelming sense of uselessness. I needed to do something. Not for revenge. Not yet. But just to feel like I was doing something other than staring at motel popcorn ceilings and chewing old memories. I called Jenna. I didn't want to. I hated dragging anyone into this. But she had invited me to the party. She had seen it. She knew. She picked up on the first ring. Everett. Oh God. I was going to call you. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he'd be there like that. We thought you were it. Can I ask you something? I cut in. My voice was dry. Bear. How long has this been going on? Silence. Jenna. I don't know, she whispered. I mean, I've had my suspicions for a while. They got close during the Dunmore pitch, but I didn't want to assume. You didn't want to assume, I repeated. Even when he had his hand on her back at a work party and half the room clammed up when I walked in? She didn't answer. Do you know where they go? I asked. Like, when they're not playing house in front of everyone? Everett. Her voice lowered. There's a folder. In the shared drive. It's not labeled obviously or anything, but a few of us found it during a pitch transfer. It has photos from a team retreat last month. What kind of photos? The kind you wouldn't want to see, but the kind you probably need to. I thanked her. I don't even remember how I ended the call. I just remember my hand trembling as I opened my laptop. I still had Kelsey's shared Google access saved from years ago, when we worked on a home renovation spreadsheet together and never bothered removing permissions. The folder was named Conference Slides 3 Quetzales. Inside were several files. Budgets. Client decks. Nothing out of place. Until I saw a zipped folder called Visuals Internal. I opened it. The first photo was of a beach. A group photo, smiling coworkers under a branded banner. But in the background, just behind the group, was Kelsey, with Carson, her arms around his waist, his hand inside the back pocket of her jeans. She didn't look surprised. She looked settled, like she'd done it before. Another image showed her laughing in a hammock, him sitting beside her with a drink. Her feet were resting in his lap. There were 6 more photos, each one worse than the last. One showed her in his jacket. One showed them in the reflection of a window, slow dancing. One, cropped awkwardly, caught them coming out of a hotel elevator alone, at night, with flushed cheeks and messy hair. I stared at the screen for a long time. The images felt like they were looking at me, not the other way around. All the stories she told me over the last few months, the late flights, the long prep nights, the headaches and missed calls, they weren't bad luck. They were rehearsals. And now I had the script in front of me. Still, I didn't message her. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I hit print. Every photo, every document, every file. And then I placed them neatly in a new folder, labeled it in bold black marker. For the next man she lies to. Because if this was the version of her the world admired, I was going to make sure someone, somewhere, saw the version that sat quietly behind the glass. And that was when I got an unexpected email. From a name I didn't recognize. Subject line: "You don't know me, but I know what your wife did in Denver." I stared at the email for a long time without opening it. The subject line kept pulsing in my inbox like it had its own heartbeat. "You don't know me, but I know what your wife did in Denver." It was from a burner Gmail address, just a jumble of letters and numbers that told me whoever sent it didn't want to be found. There was no message body, just an attachment. One file, labeled, "A favor you deserved 2 years ago." I hovered over it, my fingers shaking above the trackpad. My first instinct was not curiosity, it was panic. Like opening that file might make it all real in a way I wasn't prepared for. Like it would be the moment I stopped being the guy who suspected and started being the guy who knew. But I opened it. It was a video, just over 7 minutes long. The first frame showed a hotel room. I recognized the wallpaper. Kelsey had once posted a picture of her breakfast on Instagram in that same room, tagging the hotel in Denver during a conference she attended over a year ago. I remembered the caption, "Missing home but loving the view. #work-life, #late nights." The camera was tilted slightly, like it had been set on a dresser or left running on a chair. There was no audio at first, just the soft hum of city noise through a cracked window. And then she walked in. Kelsey, smiling, laughing. She was with someone, but it wasn't Carson. It was a different man entirely. Younger, bearded, wearing a name badge I couldn't quite read. They kissed. Right there. Like it wasn't the first time. Like they were used to it. I watched the whole thing. Every second. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth would crack. I didn't even blink. I felt like blinking would be some kind of mercy I didn't deserve. The video ended abruptly. No goodbye. No fade out. Just a hard, sudden black screen. I sat motionless for almost 10 minutes afterward. My mind wasn't just spinning, it was unraveling. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't a mistake. This was a pattern. And suddenly, I wasn't just dealing with one betrayal, I was looking at a timeline. A history. A secret second life my wife had built while I was home fixing leaking faucets and baking her banana bread because she once mentioned she missed her mom's recipe. I replayed every trip she ever took. Every networking dinner. Every late-night Zoom call where she wore makeup but swore the camera was off. I realized how many times I had trusted her without blinking. How many times I'd helped her pack a suitcase I never should have touched. The video file had no metadata. I couldn't trace it. But I noticed something in the corner of the screen, barely visible. A notepad with a logo. The same logo from the firm that hosted the retreat in Denver. I remembered it because she had brought back a pin with the same logo and left it in our kitchen drawer. A souvenir I had used to write grocery lists. Now it felt like it was covered in fingerprints. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to yell, to cry, to throw the laptop across the room and demand the last 2 years of my life back. But I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I sent one reply to the anonymous email. "Who are you?" They didn't answer. Not right away. I waited 6 hours. At exactly 3:14 a.m., I got a response. "A friend of someone she hurt before you. You weren't the first. You probably won't be the last." There was a second attachment. A screenshot of a chat log. "Kelsey, he's sweet. But Everett is like a weighted blanket. Warm, predictable, heavy, unknown. So you're staying for comfort? Kelsey, I'm staying for stability. Until I'm ready to build something real. That was the moment something broke in me. Not the affair. Not the video. That sentence. That sentence cracked something open so wide that I no longer recognized the person I was trying to fight for. I had become a placeholder. A seat filler in her life until the real show began. I closed the laptop and sat in silence, trying to remember the last time she kissed me without checking her watch afterward. The last time she looked at me like a man and not just a mortgage cosigner. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I drove back to our apartment at sunrise, parked down the block, and waited. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. But that morning, I saw something that answered more than I ever asked. Because around 9 a.m., Carson pulled into our driveway, and he used his own key to open our front door. It was subtle, just the click of the lock. But when Carson turned the handle and let himself into the apartment I used to call mine, I swear it echoed like thunder. I was across the street, 2 rows back in the lot of the corner pharmacy, watching through the windshield of my dusty Civic, gripping the steering wheel like it might take off without me. He wasn't in a rush. He wasn't sneaking in. No hoodie. No guilty glances over his shoulder. He wore a light, gray coat, the kind I'd seen in her Instagram stories, always labeled team brunch or client walkthrough. The coat I'd once admired, because it looked like something from a catalog that I could never pull off. I used to think he looked sharp. Now he looked like betrayal tailored into wool. He didn't knock. He didn't text. He just walked in, as if my life were a showroom and he already owned the lease. I waited. 10 minutes. 15. 20. Every few minutes, I imagined barreling across the street, bursting through the door, demanding answers I already knew. But I didn't. I just sat there and let the cold air leak through the crack in my window like a reminder. I was the outsider now. At 10:11 a.m., Kelsey's car pulled in. She stepped out like nothing was wrong. Like the man inside wasn't a violation of everything we promised each other when we stood in front of 70 people and said forever. She even paused to check her hair in the side mirror before heading up the stairs. She had no idea I was watching. That made it worse somehow. Knowing that this entire new version of our life existed without me. That I had been quietly edited out like a deleted scene. That their affair wasn't just passionate or stupid, it was routine. They were building something. In my space. With my mugs. On my couch. Beside the lamp I assembled and the rug I picked out from the clearance section after she said the living room needed a pop of color. I couldn't sit still anymore. So I started the engine and drove in circles around the neighborhood for the next 2 hours, trying to think of a way to confront her that wouldn't turn me into a disaster. Everything I imagined felt performative, too much or too little. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to cry. I just wanted her to see what she'd done. Without spin. Without excuses. Without that irritating, calculated shrug she gave when she didn't want to be the villain. So I came up with something else. I went back to the motel, printed every file, every screenshot, every image from Denver and beyond. I added the chat log. I annotated some of the messages. I even highlighted sections in yellow like I was prepping a legal case. It made me feel sane, for a moment, like I was building clarity out of chaos. Then I wrote a note. Not to her. To Carson. It said, "A key is just metal until it opens the wrong door. Here's everything she never told you. P.S. I was still sleeping with her when this started. Good luck figuring out when you became the placeholder." I folded it into the file and slid the whole packet into a manila envelope. That evening, I returned to the apartment when I knew she'd be out at yoga. Same Wednesday routine she never missed. Carson's car was parked out front, alone. I knocked. Twice. When he opened the door, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. Maybe he thought I moved out of town. Maybe he hoped I did. He didn't speak. Just stood there in a fitted Henley, looking like every version of confidence I never had. I handed him the envelope. Said nothing. Just handed it over, held eye contact for 3 full seconds, and walked away. I don't know what he did after that. I don't know if he read it. I don't know if he laughed or yelled or crumpled it into the trash like a bad performance review. But I do know that later that night, Kelsey called me. And her voice, finally, was shaking. She said, "Can we meet?" I didn't answer right away, because I wasn't sure if the voice on the other end of the line belonged to my wife, or to the woman who had rehearsed this call in advance, just in case her house of cards ever blew sideways. But I said yes, because I wanted to look her in the eye one more time. Not to scream, not to beg, but to ask the one question that kept waking me up at 2 a.m., night after night. When did I stop being enough? Shall I continue with part 6? In the next part, Everett finally meets Kelsey face to face, and the answers she gives are nothing like he expected. Secrets unfold, blame shifts, and Everett begins to see a new layer behind everything he thought he knew. We met at the park, not in some quiet, romantic corner near a fountain, but on the far end of a picnic bench by the public tennis courts where the paint had started to peel from the nets and the chain-link fence was rusting at the bottom. It was cold. The kind of wind that cuts through your sleeves and makes your fingertips stiff no matter how deep you shove them into your pockets. She chose the place. I sat down first. She arrived 5 minutes late, wearing a coat I didn't recognize, and sunglasses that stayed on even as the sun dipped lower behind the trees. Her hair was pulled back in a rush, and she had that look on her face, that businesslike tightness she wore when she had something unpleasant to say but was determined to seem in control. She sat across from me but didn't lean in. She just placed her hands on the table, one over the other, like a witness preparing for cross-examination. Neither of us said anything at first. I stared at a crack in the wood beneath my hand. She finally broke the silence. So, you gave Carson everything? I waited a beat before answering. No, not everything. Just the truth. She nodded slowly, lips pressed together, as if she were considering how much trouble I was worth. Did you think he didn't know? She asked. That caught me off guard. Didn't know what? She laughed once. It was bitter. Short. He's not an idiot, Everett. People don't fall into affairs like potholes. They decide to fall. And he knew I wasn't showing up to his hotel room at 10 p.m. for spreadsheets. I blinked. So why did you lie to me? She looked at me finally. Really looked. Her eyes were tired, and yet somehow colder than I'd ever seen them. Because you wanted me to lie. That line sat between us like a loaded gun. I didn't respond right away. What could I say? That it wasn't true? That I hadn't ignored the signs? That I hadn't let her excuses slip past me because I was terrified of what digging might reveal? She leaned back, folded her arms. You think you were just this poor little husband blindsided by a cruel, heartless wife. But the truth is, I was alone in that marriage long before Carson ever touched me. I felt the anger rise in my throat, hot and sour and sudden. No, I said quietly. You weren't alone. You just stopped knocking on the door. She shook her head, like I didn't get it. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I never had. I used to talk to you, she said. I used to try. And all I got back was nods. Half-words. Silence. You'd say, we'll figure it out, and then just wait for me to fix things. I was trying, I said, probably too quickly. I was holding us together. No, she cut in. You were holding yourself together and calling that love. I needed a partner, not a ghost. That hit harder than I expected. Not because it was cruel. Because part of it was true. I had coasted. I thought being calm and dependable was enough. I thought showing up on time, paying bills, making dinner, leaving encouraging notes on the fridge, that should have been enough. But she didn't want stability. She wanted ignition. And I had given her a steady flame, not a spark. Still, I couldn't let her rewrite everything. So your solution, I said, slowly, was to burn it all down? To lie, cheat, gaslight me while I was folding your laundry and asking what toppings you wanted on your pizza. She flinched, but only barely. I didn't plan it this way, she said. I shook my head. You planned it enough to keep a second toothbrush in his drawer. She didn't deny it. The wind picked up. A kid somewhere nearby dropped a tennis ball and it rolled between us, bumping against the bench leg before veering off. Neither of us reached for it. I'm not here to beg, she said after a long pause. I just thought you deserved to hear it from me. I looked up at her. Hear what? Her voice was calm. That I'm moving out. I already found a place. It's temporary, but it's mine. I'll come for my things next week. I nodded. And Carson? She shrugged. He's not part of this. Not anymore. That stunned me. What? She didn't explain. She just stood up. I stayed seated. She looked down at me like she was waiting for something. An apology, maybe. A final blow. A tear. I don't know. But I just said, you could have said something. A long time ago. She gave me the saddest smile I'd ever seen. I did. You just weren't listening. Then she walked away. No hug. No scene. Just the sound of boots over gravel and a wind that carried her scent for a few seconds longer than I was prepared for. I sat there until the streetlights came on, thinking not just about what she did, but about how long I'd been pretending I didn't see it coming. 2 days passed. The apartment was silent. still filled with her things, half-packed boxes, the ghost of her perfume clinging to a sweater she'd forgotten on the back of the bedroom chair, and a pink mug she always used for sleepy Sunday mornings. But she was gone. For real this time. Not just emotionally or temporarily. Physically absent. The rooms echoed. The first night without her was the loudest silence I'd ever heard. The second night, I couldn't sit still. I vacuumed, wiped down baseboards, rearranged books I hadn't touched in years. At one point, I even cleaned out the fridge, not because it needed it, but because I wanted to erase her favorite hummus from the shelf. Around 11:40 p.m., my phone buzzed. It wasn't her. The number wasn't saved. No caller ID. But something made me answer anyway. There was no hello. Just a pause. And then a voice, deep, a little cautious, spoke. "Is this Everett?" "Yes," I said, hesitating. "You don't know me. Name's Darren. I was with Kelsey before you." Everything inside me froze. He continued. "I'm not trying to cause more pain, man. I just figured, after what happened in Denver, after what Carson probably told you, you deserve to know something." I didn't speak. He went on. "She did the same thing to me." He wasn't dramatic. He wasn't bitter. He just sounded tired. Like someone who had been sitting in this storm longer than I had. "I was with her 3 years," he said. "Thought we were solid. She cheated with someone from her team. Said she felt unseen. Said I made her feel invisible. She left me for that guy. Then ghosted him after 6 months. You came next." I sank into the kitchen chair, phone pressed against my cheek like it was the only thing holding my head up. "I'm not calling to trash her," Darren said. "I'm calling because I know how this feels. And I wish someone had called me back then, just to tell me I wasn't crazy." I rubbed my forehead. "Did she ever explain it?" He laughed, not cruelly, just in disbelief. "She said I was too dependable. That she wanted more electricity." I winced. The words were too familiar. "You deserve better, man," Darren said. "I know that sounds hollow right now, but you do. I just wanted you to hear it from someone who wore the same shoes." He didn't ask for anything. Didn't want to meet. Didn't push advice. Just offered that and hung up. I sat there staring at the dark screen for a long time. The anger was gone. So was the heartbreak. What replaced them was something worse. Recognition. Kelsey hadn't just betrayed me. She'd repeated me. I wasn't a singular loss. I was a chapter. A role. And when I looked back at our relationship, I started seeing it for what it really was. The patterns. The rhythms. Her tendency to drift when things got stable. Her thrill when a stranger complimented her. The way she needed someone new to define herself against. It wasn't about Carson. It wasn't even about Darren. It was about Kelsey. She was always chasing something shinier. And I had let her borrow my love as a launch pad. Later that night, I found an old envelope under our bed while I was cleaning. It was wedged between the bed frame and the wall, sealed and yellowing slightly at the corners. Her handwriting. Addressed to me. Inside was a letter. Unsent. Unfinished. I don't know how long it had been there. It started like this. "Everett. If you're reading this, it probably means I finally left. Or maybe you did. I don't know which hurts more. You were always good. That was the problem. You were good. But I needed more than good. I needed to feel seen, and I think you never really saw me. Just the version of me you wanted to believe in. And maybe that's my fault too, for playing along." The letter stopped mid-sentence. Torn off or abandoned. It didn't matter. It was enough. That night, I wrote my own letter. I didn't write it to her. I wrote it to the version of myself that waited up every night for her text. That believed just one more meeting. That smiled through awkward dinner silences and excused away phone calls taken on balconies. I wrote it to the Everett who thought love meant staying silent. And then I burned the letter in the sink. No ceremony. No tears. Just flame and ash and a sigh that felt like letting go. The next morning, I got a call from Kelsey's sister. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity beat out caution. Her voice was shaky. She said, "I thought you should know. Kelsey quit her job yesterday. She didn't tell anyone where she's going. She just walked out." Then she added, "And she left something for you." I asked what. She paused. "A box," she said, "with your name on it. But she told me not to open it. Said it was for you. Only if you still care enough to understand." I picked up the box 3 days later. Her sister handed it to me on the front porch of a quiet house with ivy crawling up the railing and the smell of cinnamon drifting out from somewhere inside. She didn't say much. Just a small, tight nod. Like she knew everything without needing to say any of it aloud. The box wasn't heavy. just taped at the edges and sealed with her handwriting across the top, for Everett. Please open when you're ready to be honest with yourself. I waited. Not hours. Days. I kept it on the table in my new apartment, a one-bedroom with mismatched furniture and a curtain rod I hadn't installed right. Every time I walked past it, I felt like it stared at me. Not accusingly. Just waiting. When I finally opened it, I did it slowly. Carefully. Inside was a stack of items, and on top, a note card. No envelope. Just the card. 5 words in blue ink. You were never the problem. I sat down immediately. Beneath that was a small photo album, one I hadn't seen in years. Our early years. Smiling selfies in parking lots, train tickets, movie stubs, that stupid Halloween party where I wore a cardboard robot costume and she dressed like Rosie the Riveter. A trip to Arizona, our first snowstorm, her dog walking me through the worst flu of my life. Each photo had a short caption scribbled on the back. Not dates. Just fragments. You made me feel safe. I laughed harder this night than I had in months. You remembered my dad's story when I forgot it. I didn't deserve you this day. Toward the bottom of the box was something else. A flash drive. I plugged it into my laptop with a shaking hand. One file. A voice recording. She started speaking immediately, quietly, like she'd recorded it late at night while everyone else was asleep. Everett. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I stopped recognizing myself. And I thought that was your fault. But it wasn't. You gave me everything. A place to rest. A future I didn't know how to handle. You didn't fail me. I just kept trying to be someone you never asked me to be. And when I couldn't keep pretending, I broke us instead. I'm sorry. Not for ending it, but for making you doubt your worth. You're not invisible. You never were. The recording ended there. No music. No final words. Just the sound of her breathing for 3 seconds, and then nothing. I sat in silence for a while. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there feeling something I hadn't let myself feel in months. Release. It wasn't closure. Closure is too clean, too final. This was something different. An understanding, maybe. A quiet handshake between pain and peace. The truth is, I had loved her. And maybe, despite everything, she had loved me too. Just in a way that broke under the weight of her own confusion. That day, I went for a walk. No destination. Just movement. And at a coffee shop down the block, I smiled at the barista. Not out of politeness, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt light. Whole. Like the world didn't owe me an apology anymore. Like I didn't need to keep carrying a story that had already ended. A week later, I started therapy. A month after that, I signed up for an amateur writing workshop at the local library. The instructor asked us to write a story from our life we never thought we'd share. So I wrote this. Not for revenge. Not for pity. But because someone out there might be sitting with their own box, afraid to open it. Believing they weren't enough. And I just want them to know. You are. You always were.